I cannot believe that Johnny Magic story that you just told. That was crazy.
But you know the guy. You know that's what it's like.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't spend every waking minute with him. So I got some stories too, but I mean, wow, that was.
All right, no. But I'm just as long as you caught it on tape this time, because I don't know if he'll ever let me tell that one again.
I was supposed to catch that on. I didn't have the recorder on, so.
You got to be kidding! All right, well, forget we said anything then.
Okay, actually,
yeah, you wanted to talk about Mantis Rider this week. Is that true?
No, hold. Don't forget that we said anything. Maybe we'll talk about it on social media. So if you haven't gone yet, Facebook page, facebook.com/top-level-podcast. Twitter, twitter.com/top-level-podcast. And, maybe the hidden story will be unhidden. But it won't be this week.
I don't know, man.
All right.
Okay, well, what if I told you that it involves John dressing up a much different wardrobe than he usually wears and dancing? Johnny Magic dancing. He's oh my God. I mean, it's not surprising, but he is a jack of. He's not just a jack of many trades or all trades. Dude's a freaking master of many.
He's a duke. He's like a viscount, a jack. All right, listen. Don't spill the beans on Mantis Rider. We're going to build up to that. All right. So
okay.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to name some Magic the Gathering cards to you. I just want to get, you've been playing for a long time. You were a member of R&D. You were the first R&D intern, is that right?
Yeah.
So you were the first R&D intern. You failed to get a mana activation cost on Arcbound Ravager, as I recall.
No. That wasn't what it was at all. It was that Arcbound Ravager just cost 3.
Oh, okay.
Arcbound Ravager cost 3 the entire time I saw it. And then, obviously, I had some life real violently and suddenly came up, and I wasn't able to be there during final design of Darksteel. And one day, I was still corresponding through the mail with them, and one day I got the letter that just noted that they had pushed Arcbound Ravager to 2 in order to push chimeras, is what they were at the time, the modular creatures. And in retrospect, I wish I had not pushed for Disciple of the Vault to cost 1 instead of 2.
All right, so I'm gonna bounce some Magic the Gathering cards off of you. Your long history in the game. You tell me how you feel about some of these cards. All right, so let's start with some 2/2 creatures. How do you feel about Sky Knight Legionnaire? 3 mana, 2/2 haste and flying. So it's a pretty good Magic card, right?
Yeah, Sky Knight Legionnaire. That showed up in some States winning decks. I mean, it's one of those cards that has to be in the right era. It has to be, it's not gonna dominate every format by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, it won't be playable in every format. But it's a good card. It's respectable, and it has showed up in some tournament winning decks.
Yeah, but it's like in an era it was standard playable, right?
It was definitely it was very playable. And it was standard, in fact. It was a staple.
And it was legal not that long ago in standard. I think people thought about playing it at least. But it's just not a bad card, right?
Yeah, I mean, the bar has gone up a little bit now, but it also just, there wasn't as much competition at that spot. However, it's very close.
All right, I have another 2/2 creature.
I do think, by the way, I think that if Sky Knight Legionnaire was a 2/3, it'd be great. People would play it if it was a 2/3. Right now.
Right now.
If it was legal as a 1 RW 2/3 flying haste.
I have another 2/2 creature for you.
Yeah.
Flinthoof Boar. How do you feel about this guy?
Flinthoof Boar is great. Flinthoof Boar, I mean, first of all, to call that a 2/2 creature is a little
it's a little dishonest, right?
Right. I mean, because you and I both know Flinthoof Boar is a 3/3. And often, not only is he often a 3/3 for 2, he's a 3/3 for 3 with haste.
So
and that guy, that's just a great card.
It's kind of getting at that. He's functionally a 3/3 for 3 with haste a lot of the time. I got to tell you, I have seen him as a 2/2 in battle before.
That's because a lot of the time, I mean, his drawback of the fact that you have to have a forest, that's a very real drawback,
people are confused sometimes. Like they actually tried to put him in green decks where they didn't realize that actually you want to put him in red decks, right? That can make a green less than playing him in green decks that can make a red.
Exactly. Like if you don't have a mountain, then he's just a grizzly bear.
So, but that's a good card, right? I mean, sometimes he's a 3/3 for 2, so he sometimes he plays a similar role as Fleeceman Lion, right? He's obviously less good than Fleeceman Lion when he's not hasted, but he's got that role kind of, and then sometimes he's got this role of being a 3/3 for 3 with haste. So we can get to some other similar cards. What do you think about Bogart Ram Gang?
I know I'm here for it. That's pardon me. It's a 3/3 haste with additional evasion. I mean, the fact that he has Wither was contextually very relevant. You know, in a world of things like Plume Veil, for instance, and Wall of Reverence. I think
Kitchen Finks, as I recall, right?
Yeah, Kitchen Finks is the big one. Kitchen Finks and Murderous Redcap, he just plowed a hole through, and Wall of Roots too. I think Bogart Ram Gang was great. A 3/3 haste for 3 has been, that's a successful formula.
So, you played him in a Grand Prix, right? With Bloodbraid Elf, as I recall. Is that right?
Yeah, a Bloodbraid Elf, Bogart Ram Gang, Jund-esque deck, but with Cryptic Commands.
With Cryptic Command, yeah. Did you also did you have Cruel Ultimatum in that deck? Am I remembering right?
Probably. In general, I mean, just in the dark, if you're going to name a deck I ever built, probably.
Yeah, so Patrick Chapin, home of Bogart Ram Gang, Bloodbraid Elf, Cruel Ultimatum, Cryptic Command. That deck was a Grand Prix top 8 deck, as I recall, right?
Yeah, Michael Jacob actually top 8'd with it, 5-color blood. And actually, a number of people during there were some regionals or states or PTQs or something that season, a whole bunch of people did well with it, just because it happened to match up, pretty well against some of the forms of 5-color control and fairies that people were playing at the time.
Because you're just pushing offensively. Do you have an Anathemancer in that deck too?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think I like that deck. All right, so what about this guy? Dregmangler. Do you like him?
Dude, I like if you're gonna name the more 3/3s, the 3/3 haste for 3s you name, the more I'm gonna like them. In general, I like 3/3 haste for 3. I mean, 3/3 haste for 3 is just a good combination of stats and abilities and numbers. And Dregmangler, another nice one. Black green appreciates the haste a little bit more than red sometimes, just because they don't get it very often. Plus, Dregmangler's scavenge ability. It's useful tactically. It gives you some extra options.
I mean, the scavenge is really on the bonus there, right? Like, I think you really want that guy because sometimes you can go like first turn Elf, second turn Dregmangler. Sometimes you scavenge, sometimes you don't. But it's really these cards are all very similar, right? Sky Legionnaire is a 2/2, but he has flying. The other ones I named are all 3/3s for 3, and across the board, these are cards that saw tournament play, right? Standard play.
Yep, absolutely.
And which brings us to a current standard playable card, which is Mantis Rider, which I would argue is pretty much better than any of these 2 and 3 power, 2 and 3 cost cards.
I would also argue that Mantis Rider is fantastic. It's one of the best cards in Standard right now. It's just extremely efficient.
How do you line up Mantis Rider against Lightning Angel?
Well, it's not the greatest in the head-to-head. However,
it's very poor in the head-to-head.
However, I think that it's extreme. It's very obviously just more efficient. And Lightning Angel was a great card. I mean, Lightning Angel was played all the way up into Extended. The
the Crispicula deck. I forgot about that.
The thing about Mantis Rider is that it's 1 mana cheaper for 1 less toughness. A good rule of thumb. I mean, +1/+1 for 1 mana is like a normal-esque thing. In general, when you battle growth something, you make it slightly weaker, which is to say that when you make something cost 1 mana more and give it +1/+1, you make it slightly weaker. And there's tons of exceptions, to be sure. But negative battle growthing something is more often than not going to make it better. Setting aside 1 toughness cards. And Lightning Angel as a 2/3 for 3 would still be respectable. Mantis Rider is a 3/3. It is a full power more than I guess scarred Lightning Angel, and there's a reason why it's one of the defining cards of Standard these days.
Yeah, I think this is not just. It's not that hard to look at this card and say, this is a 3-mana card. We know that 3/3s for 3 with haste, i.e. Bogart Ramgang, i.e. Dreg Mangler, functionally Flint Hoof Boar, are playable in Standard. But this
all those things are 3/3s with some tricky elements to them. Like, for instance, you need to have basic mountains, or you have to play 3 colored mana symbols for the Ramgang, or you have to play black-green when it isn't always a supported color combination that hard. But each one is a 3/3 haste with 1 ability. Mantis Rider is a 3/3 haste with 2 abilities that are both very relevant.
And one of those abilities is flying, which is just an outrageously good ability for free, right? So we're tacking flying onto a playable shell. And Vigilance is actually contextually very, very relevant.
Yeah, and actually, I would argue that flying is contextually even more relevant than it would normally be. Mantis Rider's numbers exactly work out to take advantage of an awful lot of to get more bang for your buck. So, let me give you an example. To begin with, Mantis Rider kills Xenagos, just like out of nowhere, and Kiora, and it's actually very effective at fighting planeswalkers. Like, for instance, if they put down a Sarkhan and hit you with it, if you drop Mantis Rider the turn after, it knocks Sarkhan immediately low enough that Sarkhan can't fight the Mantis Rider back. And it flies over Elspeth's tokens and kills her in 2 hits, which is super important for making sure that it doesn't get too out of hand. All the while defending, taking advantage of that vigilance to stay home and hold down the fort. And I think that it just, like, the way that the format lines up, it has the right numbers in the right place to really profit.
So, and all the paper Magic I've played since Khans of Tarkir has come out, 100% of the paper Magic tournaments I've played with Sylvan Caryatid / Courser of Krufix decks, right? And the one thing that struck me the most about playing these kinds of decks is that give you a little time, your deck is probably more powerful than whatever deck you're playing against, right? Whether you're going up to Siege Rhinos or whether you're going up to Genesis Hydras and Pelucranos, usually the Courser Krufix Sylvan Caryatid deck is more powerful than the deck sitting across the table. The thing that struck me is the flying on Mantis Rider is so insane because you can't use your stop signs. You can't use your Sylvan Caryatid and Courser of Krufix to just absorb attacks for very little downside because he's just flying over and hitting you. And secondly, the combination of haste and evasion is putting you low fast enough that you might not even get to your more powerful cards because this is in a color combination that includes not just cards like Disdainful Stroke, right? That can stop a powerful card, but it can actually benefit from the vigilance to use cards like Stoke the Flames. And it's just impressive across the board. Like, every part of the Buffalo is jammed into those 3 mana symbols.
Oh, absolutely. And quite honestly, the combination of flying and haste together, giving you that extra damage, it gives you a lot more value from some of the reactive cards you were playing with anyway. Like, the vigilance means that you can use this quick proactive card while still defending yourself. And then the flying and haste makes it so that it's hard for them to block, and they start taking a bunch of damage incidentally, which can turn your removal spells, like Jeskai Charm or Lightning Strike or Stoke the Flame, into a game-winning plan where suddenly you're a burn deck out of nowhere. I mean, you can play like a control deck, but if you smell blood in the water, you can just pounce on an opponent and send a flurry of burn at them.
So, I mean, I think it's no secret we both think this is a really impressive Magic card, especially for the standard environment.
And if I could, one last on this before we move forward. Something that's crucial to understand is that there is an abundance of great Magic cards with a 4 toughness in standard right now. And there are an abundance of good 1 and 2 drops that not good. I would say aggressive Jackalpups. Like there's these 2 1s for 1, and there are these 4 toughness or higher threats like Corsair Crufix or Bramaz or Siege Rhino or whatever what have you. The important thing about Mantis Rider is that there aren't very many of the cards in the middle that have a 3 toughness. And so it makes things a little awkward because people are paying for Stoke the Flame or paying for things that can solve big problems. And they end up being inefficient ways to fight Mantis Rider. What will often happen is that Mantis Rider will sneak in 1 free hit, and then you'll trade with the Mantis Rider in some slightly inefficient way.
And Stoke the Flames is an atrocious answer to a Mantis Rider.
Oh, absolutely. That is the wrong way. You don't want to utter end Mantis Rider. That's the wrong.
I've used Sarkhan's, minus ability to kill a Mantis Rider. I didn't like it, but you got to do what you got to do against that red mana symbol.
So the Mantis Rider takes advantage of the fact that the format isn't just peppered with 3 toughness creatures. Because if it were, we would see even more Bile Blights than we already do.
So you've got ESP or something, Patrick, because this actually dovetails into 2 different topics I wanted to pick your brain on for this one. The first one is, in both of the first 2 podcasts, we've already intimated to this already, you talk about rate. You talk about what's the rate that I'm getting on a card, right? What's my expectation on what I'm getting for my mana? And can you talk a little bit about that? So, what sets Mantis Rider apart from other cards that are either not playable but seem like they should be playable, maybe to less experienced players, or what helps set it apart from other cards that are similarly playable?
All right, so there's 2 different factors here. Mantis Rider has an extremely good rate, which is the heart of your question, but it also happens to be well positioned. Now, the positioning of Mantis Rider, we'll set that aside for a second because that is the answer to your second question, which is what sets Mantis Rider ahead of some other cards that might be as good as it. Well, it has the right support. It has the right teamwork to get the most out of it, and it lines up the best in the format. But to answer the first part about the rate, what makes Mantis Rider's rate top notch and one of the best in standard? Well, rate is a concept in game design for how much you're getting for your mana efficiency. And it doesn't always have to be mana efficiency. It could also just be, if you're playing a game where the resource is gold or experience points or the slots that you have, whatever the resource is that you have to work with, you have these items that give you something. You have these pieces, these game pieces that give you something that you want to help you accomplish your goal. And the efficiency at which they do that compared to the resource that they cost you is the rate. And Mantis Rider's rate is great. The way that you know that it's great is by having I guess the long answer is this boring, having an understanding of what you can get for different amounts and what's going on in the format. But the short answer is that compare it to the other cards that people play with. What are the cards that people play with? What are the cards that usually get printed? And it is important to distinguish between the 2 because it's not just enough to be better than the average card that gets printed. In constructed tournament play, people play with nothing but great cards for the most part. The only time they don't play with great cards is when their cards have great synergy. And in limited, it would take a different rate to excite you. In limited, a lot of the time, a 2/2 flyer with no other abilities for 3 mana sounds like a good idea, right?
A 2/2 flyer with one terrible ability for 4 mana is a staple in limited, right?
So the point being that Mantis Rider is obviously miles beyond anything for limited. But for constructed, we have a higher bar. Now that said, as we established with things like Bogart Ramgang, Dreg Mangler, and that's the right approach. When you look at other cards that have been successful, it can give you a frame of reference of how good of a rate does it take. People aren't playing... I mean, some amount of the time people are playing Bogart Ramgang because he's a goblin, or Dreg Mangler because it's a zombie, and then there's synergy. There's some synergy component. But often Dreg Mangler and Bogart Ramgang would see play just because they were good cards. And Mantis Rider is like these cards that are established good cards that are... This type of a thing is consistently good. A 3/3 haste creature with any ability at all, even if you don't use it all the time. A 3/3 haste creature for 3 is generally good. And Mantis Rider is a step beyond that. It's got 2 good abilities. And I say good because even though Vigilance is a little bit, it's not always the most beloved ability, it ends up, it's nice if you don't have to pay for it. Because it does do something you want. You just don't want to have to pay for it. And Mantis Rider actually lets you do exactly that. It gives it to you without you having to pay for it. Because honestly, a 3/3 haste flyer for 3 would be awesome. We would be all about that.
So what's amazing about this is when you were talking about people starting out with Jackal Pups, right? Say somebody, lands a Fire Drink Crusader as their first play, right? They can get in for 4 about the same time that you get in for 3 with your first Mantis Rider. So they're ahead. But now they can't even get in anymore. They have to deal with your Mantis Rider, or your Mantis Rider is hitting them for 3 and is the stop sign for their Fire Drink Crusader, or whatever other 1-drops they have. It's really interesting that, the Vigilance, which is the throwaway ability there, makes Mantis Rider a great racer. You think like, wow, the flying and the haste make it a great racer. But the Vigilance also makes it a great racer. And I think it's really underappreciated for this card.
Yeah, and I think that, Fire Drink Crusader is obviously has the fire-breathing tactical implications. Even that backfires sometimes too, because then your opponent ends up investing mana, pumping their Fire Drink Crusader, and you Lightning Strike it. Now they took a damage from using the ability. They took 3 damage from the Lightning Strike, killing the Fire Drinker, which also does damage to them, and you're still hitting with a Mantis Rider every turn. The key, though, is that because so many people are playing these 2/1s and 2/2s, like for instance Xenagos tokens, and honestly 1/1s also, like Goblin Rabblemaster and Bramaz and Elspeth create a glut of tokens, Hordling Outburst, all these things that are making 2/1s, 1/1s, 2/2s. There's a lot of them, and Mantis Rider can hold off several of them at the same time or be effectively abyssing them. If the format was full of a lot more, for instance, Fleecemane Lions, and if people played with, if there was a 3/1 trample creature in standard, if there was if Bogart Ramgang was around, if there were a lot more 2-drops with 3 power, Mantis Rider would be much worse because he wouldn't actually be defending you against the small creatures. But that's not the world we live in. Because he's so effective, there's people paying lots of mana for several small tokens, and there are people paying small amounts of mana for creatures with a 2 power or less. Mantis Rider just lines up great.
So sometimes we talk about gap deck design. We say like, look, there's an inefficiency in the capital market of all the decks that we can play, and we talk about certain deck designers. Mark Herberholtz is the one that often comes up where this guy found the hole, right? It feels to me, and this is actually very enlightening for me because I just thought of Mantis Rider as this really great card on rate, and I have a lot of experience of getting hit with it. It's flying over my Courser of Crufix. I'm like, what am I going to do about this guy? My life total's going down. I'm going to lose to a Stormbreath Dragon if I don't deal with this quickly. But it sounds to me, and this is different from how I came into this to begin with, that you think that Mantis Rider is almost as great gap card at the same time.
Yeah. I think that Mantis Rider, it's not the same as the other cards in Standard right now, and that's part of it. It fills a niche. It just has the right numbers, the right cost. It lines up in the right way to be even more than the sum of its parts.
So the other part I want to talk about is context and evaluating different cards that, I think when people make their own decks or think about tuning or modifying an existing archetype, really there's one question that they always ask themselves, which is, which card should I put in, right? Which card should I change? And one of the things I want to talk about is when we look at cards that are in a deck, the difference that makes the difference, right? It's like, well, in Pro Tour Journey into Nyx, you played Fleeceman Lion, and you didn't even start with any Fleeceman Lions. You initially played it as a curve filler. It turned out to be one of the defining cards in your deck. You got a huge amount of value for it. How do players successfully say, look, I have room for a certain amount of 2-drops in my deck. How do I know when I should play Seeker of the Way versus when I should play Fleeceman Lion? Or at the 3, I have a white deck. My white deck can make a bunch of different colors. How do I know when I should play Mantis Rider versus when I should play Brimaz? All these 4 cards I've said have advantages to them, and all return a good rate.
Well, that right there is the art of it. There are more good cards than you can play with in your deck, and the first step is figure out what are the good cards in a given format, But the second step, once you know what those are, involves the positioning. What is the perception of other people about what the good cards are? Because you want to play cards that are good against the cards that other people are actually going to play. So
this is almost a leveling strategy in our own card choices.
Absolutely, and you want to be the top level.
So,
wink, wink.
Yeah. So this is, we should explain what leveling is actually. Then.
Absolutely, but I do want to provide just a little bit more on for people evaluating rate itself.
Yep.
It's not an easy thing. It's not out of nowhere. You can just be like, oh, I'm just going to do this formula. There are some games that have equations in which the calculating the rate is relatively easy. There is some standard, some metric where the item only has to perform on one axis, or the character only has to perform along, in one area. And it can make rate be an easy thing to evaluate just using math. In Magic, it's a very complicated thing. Creatures attack and they block. Abilities can be useful some percentage of the time, but depending on what other people play, sometimes they're not. The costs, a difficult, like having 3 different colored mana symbols can be very challenging, or it can actually be easier than like even like the cost on a Brimaz, for instance. The thing to do is to do lots of comparisons yourself and get used to get used to practicing comparing 2 different cards, compare 3 different cards, compare all the cards that people play with in a tournament format that succeed, and then compare those to the cards that don't show up, and try to figure out what were the differences. Figuring out how much would you pay for something. If there's card A that people play with and card B that people play with, and the only difference between them is that one of the cards costs slightly more or is slightly smaller or whatever in exchange for some ability, and both of the cards see play, then you start to get a feel for, those 2 things are of comparable value. Or alternatively, if there are 2 cards, one of which people play and the other they do not, what is the difference between them? When there's only one difference, sometimes it can be easy to see, this ability is worth more than what it costs here, and so this card is good. Or, they're charging me a little bit extra for this ability, but now nobody plays with the card. I guess that ability isn't worth that much on that body, And
the reason for that is, even if you can look at a card and you're like, this is a desirable card to play, sometimes it costs too much, but other times it's just a question of there were other cards you could have played to devote those 1 to 4 slots in your deck, and you get a better rate for that alternative, right? I think it's just about the competition,
right? Absolutely.
Cards.
In Standard right now, there are a huge number of incredibly good 3 and 4 casting cost spells, and as a result, the bar is higher for what it takes to be a good 3 or 4 casting cost spell. When the Mantis Riders of the world, the Butcher of the Hordes, the Siege Rhinos, the Courser of Prefixes, the Mantis, the Bramazes, the Crackling Dooms, the Hero's Downfalls. There's so many good 3 and 4 casting cost cards that as a result, you end up increasing the bar because one of the resources that is actually a part of evaluating any Magic card that you could play, one of the resources is the opportunity cost of playing this card instead of another card. Not just in your deck, but at this spot in the curve, because on the 3rd turn, you could play any 3-cost card you wanted. If you want to play this card, it has to be able to justify itself compared to a different card you could have played at the same time.
So let's talk about leveling, what levels are actually to begin with, and then we can talk about how we would use the concept of levels as one of the tools in our tool set to help choose which cards, given the fact that there are so many great cards at comparable casting costs.
So skipping to the end,
Yep.
The next level is Scissors. And the way that you get there is by realizing that if people think that Rock is what is going on, Rock is the popular strategy, then level 0, what we would say is that Rock is level 0. That's where you start. That's the baseline. And because you know that other people know that Rock is what's going on, Paper beats Rock. So Paper would be level 1 strategy because it beats the level 0 strategy of Rock. And because Paper is so obviously good, since everybody's going to play Rock, and since everybody's going to play Rock, then Paper is good. But if Paper is good, then Paper will rise to the top. And as a savvy tournament player who actually wants to win the event, not just put up a good record in Swiss, they want to win the event, you know that you have to not just metagame for the field as a whole, but you actually have to metagame against the winner's circle. You need to metagame against the people who are going to do well. And if the people who are going to do well are all Paper, you want to be the guy who shows up with Scissors. Yeah, sometimes you get beat up by, Rock early on, but if you can dodge the first couple of rounds, you can tear a path through a field of Paper because, once Paper is the most common strategy, then Scissors is the new Paper. And that's being at the next level, is figuring out how to beat the things that people are going to do to beat what they perceive is what's going on.
So let's play a game.
Sure.
Folks are really inspired by Brad Nelson's ability to put together Butcher the Horde and Siege Rhino together in one deck. And they're like, I really like this idea. These are 2 of the elite threats in the game. But you know what I'm going to do? I'm a little skeptical of my mana base because it's 4 colors. I got 2 Bloodstained Mires. I got all these. I got a basic Swamp. It doesn't help me cast my my Courser Krufix on turn 2. I might randomly get a Mountain before I need it. You know what I'm going to do? I am going to switch Brad Nelson's Foolish Lightning Strikes. They're very foolish. I don't need this. I got Siege Rhino to hit people for 3 direct damage. I'm going to switch to Magma Jet because this is going to help me fix my draws in the first few turns of the game. If somebody makes a choice like that, switches from Lightning Strike to Magma Jet, what kind of implications does that give you as not just a deck designer, but kind of a card picker when you're making decisions around cards like Seeker of the Way versus Fleeceman Lion, or Bramaz versus Mantis Rider?
Well, if the world are we talking about the hypothetical in which Magma Jet was actually popular?
Yeah, we're saying that people are saying I need to fix my mana better. I'm going to switch out Lightning Strike for Magma Jet. That's the movement in the metagame this is now the default.
Well, we saw something a little bit like that in Block. In Block Constructed, a lot of people played Magma Jet because the perception was that there are no 3 toughness creatures. It's nothing but 2/1s for 1, and Agent of Fates 3/2, or Painseer a 2/2. And then it jumps to Bramaz and Courser of Krufix and starts going bigger. Polis Crusher, Polychronos.
Which none of those cards are solvable by a Lightning Strike.
Right, and so Lightning Strike was a little bit of a. Some people played it. It's just a fine card, but there were a lot of people who kind of try to sneak out some extra value. They're like, well, Lightning Strike doesn't kill anything that Magma Jet doesn't kill anyway, and so they played Magma Jet instead because they're like, at least then I can get some scry. And those were the people who tasted the best to fleece main lions.
They were delicious.
And Mantis Rider's the same way. If Magma Jet became really popular, Mantis Rider's stock would soar. I mean, Mantis Rider's already single-handedly one of the biggest reasons that Bile Blight and Lightning Strike are as popular and standard as they are. I think if it were not for Mantis Rider, it's possible we would see less Lightning Strikes and less Bile Blights. But if we somehow lived in a world where people were playing less Lightning Strikes and less Bile Blights anyway for some other external reason, Mantis Rider's stock would soar. And on the answering your question from earlier about context, it's not just enough to figure out the rate of the cards. You also want to try to think about which cards match up well against other cards. For instance, Mantis Rider being so popular has really pushed down the number of Xenagoses and Kiora the Crashing Waves that we see in Standard. And we can do that. We can look at these comparisons for tons and tons of cards. Like, what does the head-to-head really look like? Mantis Rider helps decrease your interest in playing Elspeth. Now, Elspeth's one of the most powerful cards in the format, and yet a lot of people play white decks that don't even have Elspeth. And even the decks that do have Elspeth nowadays will often play only 2 or 3 Elspeths.
Which is, you would never have done that in block, right? It was just, that was your ace of aces in block.
In block, there just weren't enough other cards that were competitive against Elspeth, and there weren't enough things that matched up well against her. There weren't enough alternative plans. There wasn't any reason to do anything else besides Elspeth. But I think that it's just a good exercise for people to get into. You don't have to have the highest confidence that you know all of the interworkings of every dynamic between every card or every relationship between every deck and how much they influence each other. Just taking a look at 2 decks and thinking about how some of the cards match up against each other is such an important exercise for developing a framework inside, because you want your brain to have a language for being able to understand these things and being able to understand the relationships and the dynamics between cards. And thinking about 2 cards at a time, a deck versus another deck, a card versus another deck, just thinking about all of these different possible ways that the cards can line up, you start to develop a subconscious framework that you can use to be able to evaluate yourself. When does it seem like a good time to play Mardu? Or when does it seem like a good time to add more dragons to your deck? Or when does it seem like a time to play 15 removal versus when does it seem like a time to play 0?
So, let's say for sake of argument, people start playing a lot of Anger of the Gods. Would you take that as a signal to play fewer Mantis Riders, or if you're going to play Jeskai Colors, you're in on Mantis Rider no matter what? Is that?
It's pretty hard for me to imagine playing Jeskai Colors without playing Mantis Rider, because Mantis Rider is better than the Jeskai cards in general.
I mean, it's just the reason to play Jeskai, in your opinion?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I could imagine a world in which you don't play Mantis Rider, because there are other fantastic 3-drops like Goblin Rabblemaster and Bramaz, and Hordling Outburst, and lots of other things too. I mean, you could just play Burn. You could play, counter spells like Dissolve, or you could play Anger of the Gods, or Banishing Light. I mean, there's a million different ways you could go. Thassa, but if you're actually already playing the color combination for Mantis Rider, it isn't quite to the degree that Siege Rhino is. I would never play an Abzan deck without Siege Rhino. What are you even doing? I mean, I guess if you're playing some synergistic Reanimator deck, even then, it's it's just the best thing to reanimate.
It's so awesome whipping that guy is unbelievable. The life swing is.
Yeah, I think that not playing Mantis Rider in a Jeskai deck is pretty fancy. Now, that said, it depends on what you're doing. If you're playing a heroic deck, obviously your constraints are very, very different than some mid-rangey deck. If your deck is very combo-oriented, if your deck is lightning fast, maybe you don't want the better Lightning Angel. But I think it's in general a good idea to ask yourself how it matches up, because nothing is sacred. If you think that Mantis Rider doesn't line up well in the format, it's very possible that it wouldn't. You know, like, what if the format switches to a world where everybody just has lightning strikes and bioblights and anger of the gods, and that people are consistently going over the top of Mantis Rider in some way efficiently. You know, particularly like if the next set comes out and there's a green creature that's a 3/4 flash reach. You know, there's some kind of a simian grunt that has reach. That could be brutal for a Mantis Rider, you know? So,
oh, yeah. I mean, we've seen...
Well, I know you know, because at this point I've asked enough times.
Well, I'm just, you know, we've seen the stock of really powerful and popular cards fall precipitously with the release of a new set, right? So, I mean, think about, like, Pad to Exile in Standard. It was the most popular card in Standard. And then all of a sudden, you know, you snap your fingers and then it was barely even played.
Well, part of it is that Path to Exile suffered from its own greatness. It was so good that it pushed out creatures that are vulnerable to it, like Chameleon Colossus and Demigod of Revenge. And as a result, the format was just full of cards that were resilient to Path to Exile, like Mole Drifter, Ranger of Eos, Broodmate Dragon, and...
Yeah, or even cards that were just going to get their money anyway, like Primeval Titan would be a great example, right? So you can path it, but it basically did what it wanted.
Yeah, the Path to Exile suffered from all the creatures in the format became good against it. And I think that's one of the things we're seeing a little bit in Standard right now. Elspeth, it's still a good card, but it's so incredibly overpowered, yet somehow it's not one of the dominating forces in Standard. And that's because what it takes to be a Standard deck nowadays is being good against Elspeth. All the strategies, they're so fast they kill you by turn 6, turn 5 even. Or they fly over, or they can duck under, or they can make you discard it, or they can destroy it with Hero's Downfall, or they can counter it very easily, or they can do 1 damage to everything, or they can sweep up the tokens.
Or, you know, there's just massive technological improvements in decks that would have the mana and wherewithal to compete with Elspeth or play Elspeth themselves in other contexts, right? All of a sudden, you have decks with minor constellation themes playing cards like Doomwake Giant, or, you know, decks that in other contexts would be like, oh, well, the top of my curve is Elspeth. Now the top of their curve is Hornet Queen. You know, both Doomwake Giant and Hornet Queen solve the Elspeth problem in very different ways, but both of them are very, very effective against Elspeth.
Very, definitely. And that leads into a good exercise for when a new set comes out, is looking at what are the popular cards, or the best cards, or the most talked about cards, or the cards that look like they have the best rate. Whatever the hot cards are, what do those cards go in? What do those cards match up well against? Not just strategies and decks, but also individual cards. What cards do they seem to line up well against? And then once you realize, oh, well, these new hot cards are great, people are going to play with these new hot cards, that's going to hurt these other things that those hot cards are good against. Then you start to ask yourself, 1, what's good against these new hot cards for sure? But 2, what's good against the things that are good against those hot cards? And what things used to get beat up on and are by something in the metagame, but now their predator is declining? Because if something comes into the format that makes nobody play Mantis Rider anymore, for instance, there's a 3/4 flash reach creature or something. If Mantis Rider's popularity drops, then what does that do to the rest of the format? Maybe Kiora becomes a little more appealing now, or maybe Xenagos is more appealing again, or maybe we have less of a reason to play Jeskai, and because people have less of a reason to play Jeskai, some deck that you had that always lost to Jeskai is a more viable choice now because there's just less Jeskai out there.
So, great example of that in the current Standard, the simultaneous rotation of both Lifebane Zombie, and Supreme Verdict in 3 different colors, I think greatly contributed to the rise of Blue-White Heroic in Standard, right? So Blue-White Heroic was an available deck choice a year ago. You could play basically every card that's played in. They like maybe 2 copies of Seeker of the Way in the deck that would have to be replaced by some other Grizzly Bear. But no one was competitive with Blue-White Heroic, a year ago. Now it's actually considered a legitimate contender in Standard.
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. That is a deck that has benefited so much from a change of what predators are out there and from what prey is out there. Supreme Verdict ripped that deck apart before. It was just this fast sweeper, but also the Lifebane Zombie as part of a total package of a black deck full of Doom Blades and Devour Fleshes.
And gaining life, right? Like the
with Grey Merchant for huge amounts.
It's like you're playing this weenie deck with no reach. You get in. They gain 6. Now
plus
they're going to race you.
It was just so brutal to try to play a strategy that couldn't get rid of a pack rat.
The pack rats, they start out with ordeals on them, right?
Right, absolutely. The pack rat is just a better game plan. But now that pack rat is gone, and you don't need the removals bad, now that the Lifebane Zombie is gone, now the Supreme Verdict is gone, and part of it is Blue Devotion. Blue Devotion was a difficult thing to race in some regards, because they could interact with you, and sometimes you wouldn't be able to interact with them. Instead of all those extremely hostile predators out there, now Blue-White Heroic is in this new jungle. And this new jungle, the savage animals that people consider to be predators are grindy card advantage green decks with ground creatures that have expensive removal spells. Now instead of Doomblade, people play Hero's Downfall. Now instead of Pack Rat, people play Courser of Prefix. And now Stoke the Flames is like a legitimate removal spell that people play, and it costs 4 mana. People are all excited about these mid-rangey creatures. People are all excited about expensive removal spells. And the net result is that even though Blue-White Heroic is underpowered, its card quality is not the highest by any stretch of the imagination.
Singing Bell Strike.
The beauty of it is that it matches up well. It can make its creatures unblockable, dodging the fat mid-range creatures that people play. It can produce some really, tempo oriented plays like God's Willing to stop a Hero's Downfall that can give it a big mana advantage. And its creatures can actually, they're legitimate threats that can actually overpower people who, instead of attacking with Pack Rats or Master of Waves, are trying to win with Siege Rhino or Goblin Rabble Master. So I personally think that Blue-White Heroic is an example of being so well positioned that it can make up for its decline in card quality. Its shortage of card quality. But it is the perfect example of a deck, a strategy, an archetype who its entire reason for existing is because the format changed. Which also, as a little footnote, whenever the format changes, it's such a good idea to go back and look at all the strategies that anybody has ever played with the cards in the format, even the ones they haven't played recently, and ask yourself, is it time for a comeback? Is it time for this strategy to break out? Is it time for this strategy to move into Tier 1? Is there some contextual reason why this strategy should be good now?
Because the answer might just be yes, right?
And when it is, that's what happened to us with Dragonstorm. Dragonstorm was the biggest thing in the world in 2006, winning the World Championships, right? But it was forgotten. People stopped playing with it. Some cards rotated out. People assumed the archetype was dead. There was a card change, and there were some new printings that caused us to ask ourselves, could it be time to make a comeback? We saw somebody's burn deck somebody played in a Grand Prix with a Spine Rock Knoll burn deck, and it was a compelling new piece of technology that, I wondered, maybe this could actually, what if we use this to make up for the lack of the blue cards that we lost?
Yeah, I mean, what was the Spine Rock Knoll burn deck hiding with Spine Rock Knoll? Was there actually a big mana efficient card it was getting back? Or?
Grape Shot. They had Grape Shot, Pyromancer, Swath, Howling Mine. It was a Howling Mine burn deck with just as much direct damage as possible, and it tried to build up to Grape Shot and Pyromancer, Swath.
I mean, the amazing thing about this story is that you basically retained the exciting parts about their deck, right? Grape Shot, Pyromancer, Swath, in addition to hybridizing it with this amazing engine that is taking advantage of both mana discounting from Spine Rock Knoll and it's the raw power plus storm mechanic, right? So dodging counter spells of the card Dragonstorm itself.
Yeah, I mean, and shout out to Chris Sutton who had made the original burn deck that really put Spine Rock Knoll and the Storage Land engine. See, one of his innovations was the use of all those storage lands to make for a big turn.
Oh, I think I underappreciated how good the fungal reaches and such were then. You used this word technology a minute ago, and I think that this is a word that people use very loosely in Magic without really thinking about what the implications are. When I use the word technology, I think about the direct sort of historical memory that I often reference is the transition of bronze weapons to iron weapons in the ancient world of swordsmanship, and that if you're the guy caught with a bronze weapon, you're going to be badly outgunned when you're faced with an opponent with an iron weapon, and that anytime that we really talk about shifts in technology, we're really talking about the paving of a new standard for what gets played. And I think that's relatively rare, actually, that happens in the format.
I agree.
I think the biggest recent example I can think of is your team, the Pantheon, and other folks at the same time, incorporated See the Unwritten in the Black-Green Devotion deck. And I think that was like a really substantial change in how people would go on to play that deck in the future, right? So all of a sudden you had half a tooth and nail built in.
Yeah, it's got different. It had different advantages. There were some places, some places it makes it better, some it makes it worse. In the straight up head to head, the See the Unwritten gives you more raw power and lets you go over to the top of the green player in the green semi-mirror. However, eventually See the Unwritten ended up falling out of favor again once everybody had access to Disdainful Stroke in their sideboard. Because when you're facing Disdainful Strokes, you don't want to have a See the Unwritten in your hand instead of a Genesis Hydra. But at the time, Disdainful Stroke wasn't as big yet, and See the Unwritten let you start chaining, creating these big turns where you'd See the Unwritten and get an Eidolon Blossoms and a Doomweight Giant at the same time. And if you had some constellations in play, you could create tons of triggers.
Cool. So I think that's go ahead.
I was just going to say that type of thing. I actually think that another good example of this is Ari Lax's team, what they did with Abzan. I mean, I played Abzan at the Pro Tour also, but I think that their build, I liked my mana base better, but I liked their deck. They redefined the standard, the gold standard. They showed people just how good of an Abzan core there is, because at the time, most people didn't play as many Planeswalkers as they do. And
Well, the diversity of planeswalkers they played as well, right? Like
absolutely.
I could see people just playing, jamming 3 or 4 Elspeth, but the inclusion of a Johnny Mentor of Heroes is just, every time I look at that card, I'm just like, it's probably right, but
Liliana,
I shake my head.
Having Sorin, Liliana, Ajani, and Elspeth, and moving away from stuff like Hornet Queen or Fleece Mane Lion, that sort of helped redefine the format. And sometimes you go back to Hornet Queen, and sometimes you go back to Fleece Mane Lion, but there's no denying that Abzan decks looked different after that tournament because those guys did such a good job of nailing the right mix of Abzan for that weekend. And that kind of set the pace for the following week. It was a leveling up of technology. And if you didn't get the memo, your weapons are going to be made out of a much worse metal.
Oh, yeah. And imagine what kind of advantage they have in end hostilities matchups, right? So imagine you're one of these Abzan decks that are coming up right now. Competent players are running that have 4 Wingmate Rocks, right? Their 5 is Wingmate Rock, more Wingmate Rocks. And you have Arilax's side, which is like a Johnny Mentor of Heroes, which is in some ways a fairly unimpressive investment for 5 mana. But in the head-to-head, all of a sudden, their end hostilities gets really, really attractive, especially if you can get the opponent to really commit to spending a lot of mana and cards onto the battlefield.
I think that the part of what made that deck match up so well was that people were using end hostilities at the time. People were using, and so the sort of the baseline assumption was, well, Elspeth is the thing, and if Elspeth is the thing, then people were like, well, Hornet Queen goes over the top of it, and end hostilities beats Hornet Queen, but Ari's Planeswalkers beat the end hostilities that other people were using. And Ari uses Wingmate Rock to beat Elspeth in a similar way to Hornet Queen, but at a lower cost. And he could still get hit by end hostilities, but he can fight it with those Planeswalkers. And I think that they just found such a good mix that it was very much like switching from a Bronze era to a Silver era, Yeah. Or an Iron era, if you will.
Iron. Well, I mean, it depends. If you're fighting against werewolves, silver is the correct metal. If you're fighting against wolf wares, you really want iron. But I think we give the listeners something to chew on in terms of technology. And the important thing, though, is Mantis Rider is a pretty good card.
Oh, definitely. A couple things this week. At the time of this posting, we're going to be knee deep into the World Championships. They started earlier this week on, is it Monday and Tuesday? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And then by, later in the week, they will be in the middle of the Magic World Cup. And then this upcoming weekend, from the frame of reference of this being posted, will be the top 4 of the World Championships in addition to the finals of the World Cup.
You'll be hoisting a trophy soon.
Definitely going to be doing the best that I can and just trying to make the most of the experience. I know that I would like to note, though, that Next Level Magic is back. Next Level Magic has been available as an ebook all year, but we recently did a bunch of graphic design work and got a new printing of Next Level Magic updated with new examples, new cards, new everything, just taking into consideration that at this point, and this is 5.5 years deep into Next Level Magic, and a lot has happened since the book first came out. And so anybody who's interested in the actual paperback, it is finally back at StarCityGames.com, which I'm super excited for. I can't wait to show you how it came out. I've been working on this for quite a while with a whole bunch of the guys at Star City, and I'm really proud of it.
That's awesome. Congratulations on that.
Thanks. So what's up on your end?
I co-launched a new podcast recently.
Oh, dude, I heard good things about your podcast.
I'm pretty excited about my new podcast. I somehow roped a Pro Tour champion into doing it with me, and the initial results are pretty good. People seem to like it.
I'm just having a good time. I think it's super fun. Talking about Magic is super awesome. I'm actually super excited to be doing commentary in a couple weeks. It's I don't get to do commentary too much anymore. My schedule is a little hectic, but I'm going to be doing commentary in Seattle for the SCG Invitational, alongside Patrick Sullivan and Cedric Phillips. That's going to be a nice one.
Oh wow! Any excuse I have to hang out with Patrick Sullivan.
Oh, absolutely. And next year, not on the docket at the moment, just because got too many other obligations. But write your local congressman or Evan Irwin, and who knows, maybe I could see next year jumping on for a guest spot for at least one of these, maybe two, just for the fun of it, because talking about Magic is super fun, you know?
What about doing a Grand Prix?
Maybe. It's hard on weekends right now. I've been working hard on something that soon I'll be able to leak information about. But right now it's shh.
Yeah, I got floated some potential Grand Prix spots next year, and in some cases, just like I was like, well, I don't really want to do a limited Grand Prix again. I don't think it suits my strengths as a commentator. They're like, oh, well, how about this standard one? And I'm like, oh, I kind of want to play in that one. But if I don't know, maybe I'll tap the phones, and if I could do it with you, I think it might be super fun though.
Dude, kicking it with you is always a blast. Thanks for having me, man.
Cool. I mean, thanks for coming. And I'd say good luck in the World Championships, but at the point that people are listening to this, they already know that you're going to be hoisting the trophy. So
No. When this is posted, I'm either in the top 4 or I'm not. Either way. But the top 4 will not have happened yet.
Well, I wish you every kind of fortune that I can, given my current understanding and constraints of linear time. That's what I got.
Absolutely. And I hope that you have all sorts of life experiences that you're able to learn from.
That's like the Chinese one, right? Like, I hope you have an interesting life. All right. This is Top Level Podcast. Bye, everybody.
See you next week.